All right, look, we're out with the family today. We're doing some walking, did some kite flying, trying to find some place to put some cameras out for the turkeys. We ended up stumbling upon this shed. I think it's Murphy, which we'll put a picture up later on. But got some awesome news. We have our title sponsor now for the Martial Outdoor Podcast. Final Draw TV has come along and thought enough of us to become our title sponsor. So we're going to work with them a lot. You can see all their content, all their videos on their YouTube page. Also, go to the Mossy Oak Go app. You can keep up with them there. They're on the Sportsman channel 52 weeks now, so you will not miss any action. But yeah, through the podcast, you will hear some tips, tricks from them, what's going on in the Final Draw TV world, and we're looking forward to what's to come. So y'all keep up with the Martial Outdoor Podcast and Final Draw TV, and we'll have some great content coming to you. All right, another week of the Marshfield Outdoor Podcast. I appreciate you tuning in. We got some awesome news. I know if you've kept up with our Instagram and Facebook, you've probably seen it already, but Final Draw TV has come aboard and seen something in us. So I appreciate that, Carson Lindsay, to become our title sponsor. It's awesome. It's going to be awesome to work with them and progress with them and share some of their content. But, you can find some of their content right now or all their content on their YouTube channel. You go over there and look at that. They're on the Sportsman channel 52 weeks now, so you can catch everything there, and over on the Mossy Oak Go app as well. So visit those sites, check out what they have going on, the latest seasons, latest episodes from each season. And each week, you can find tips and what the Final Draw team is up to right here on the Marshfield Outdoor Podcast. So we appreciate that. It's a new progression, new chapter in the podcast world for us, and looking forward to it. But, I'm not going to draw it out too much longer. I got Tony on tonight. Smotherman. How do you say your last name, Tony?
You got it the second time. Smotherman.
Okay.
Tony
Perfect.
Smotherman, sir.
I meant to ask you before we started recording, but I thought maybe I'd just throw it in like that since I skipped over that part.
Close enough for government work, bro.
Yeah. Well, man, I appreciate you joining me tonight. You were on with the Anabolic Grow podcast episode, and it's hard to get a hold of you. And not a hold of you, but actually tie you down long enough to get you to be back on the episode. So I appreciate it, man.
Well, we appreciate the opportunity first and foremost. But yes, like you say, it has been rather tough to pin me down here lately. The first part of our year, everybody thinks about in our world hunting season being the busiest time of year, but really for us, it's not actually the busiest time. Right. The first 2 months is the busiest time for us because of trade show season.
Yeah.
So we went, like we were talking before we got on air, but we went for 45 straight days on basically a trade show tour across the country. And so that keeps us pretty busy, especially when you only have a couple of days in between each one. And that basically involves trying to wash your trade show clothes and travel in between, and then somehow or another answer a few emails. I think when I finished this tour here last week, I was like 300 and something emails in the hole. So it makes it tough. And I apologize, but I appreciate your patience.
Yeah, that's right. Well, Tony, I guess that's also why I guess your Instagram handle is what, Travelin Hunter?
Roger that.
Yeah, exactly. So you're all over the place all the time. Morgan, my wife, has figured out, hunting season for somebody that is almost obsessed with it, like, men, you and I. It doesn't start and stop when hunting season's going. Now the podcast, and it's 365 days a year now. So she's had to get used to that, which we've talked about. So,
years ago, everybody, not so much today, just because, like you said, everybody's doing so many different things now. But years ago, when I was a younger guy, it was work hard through the summer, and then hunting season started at the end of September. Well, now that hunting season never stops, just because we're doing so many more things now because, technology. We're doing a Zoom podcast here, and I'm sitting in my gun workroom here talking to a computer, and I can see you on the other end. So technology touches everything that we deal with on a day-to-day basis. Now we're running so many more trail cameras, and now trail cameras went from regular trail cameras to actual cellular trail cameras. So now we got trail cameras everywhere. We're on our phones all the time. Yeah, hunting season never stops.
Yeah, well, it makes it good for an obsessed hunter, but sometimes it can be a little tough on the family, which if people go back to last week's episode, I think it was Morgan, my wife, she's been on 2 now. She's finally getting the courage. And we talked about hunting in the household and just some of the things that we went through in the first 6 years we've been married, trying to figure out that common ground, because I didn't let up a whole lot on the hunting.
You know, I guess for my side of things, I don't have. I am married, and I'm actually tomorrow is my 19th wedding anniversary. So I've been married to my wife 19 years tomorrow.
Happy anniversary.
So the great thing about my lifestyle, it's always been Travelin Hunter. Since that name or that nickname started as an email address back when I was 19, which was 30 years ago today, or 30 years ago this year. I'm sorry, not today. 30 years ago this year. And it started out as an email address, travelinghunter@aol.com. And some folks that's maybe listen to this podcast tonight don't even know what AOL is, but that was kind of our first step into email or electronic mail at that time. And it just became not just a nickname or a email, it actually become a lifestyle to where that I traveled all over the country hosting outdoor TV shows for many years for many different companies. And it got to the point where I was hunting 10 to 18 states a year, depending on what tags I drew. And thankfully, 19 years ago tomorrow, I met my wife on a hunting trip in Wyoming. And she come from a hunting family with pack horses, and they hunted big game up in the mountains, a different style of hunting than what I grew up doing, but nonetheless, they were outdoorsmen and understood the lifestyle. They were traveling hunters before I come into their family, because they would pack up their horses and horse trailers and head up into, the greater Yellowstone area of Wyoming, and then pack in 20 miles on horseback and live in the mountains for 15 to 20 days. I mean, they were traveling hunters before I actually penned that name and email address.
Yeah.
So I married into a family that understands hunting and being gone a lot. So it actually worked out for me pretty good. I never had the hurdles that some folks have.
Oh, it's real. It's definitely real on this side. And, it may have been nice for you because it probably actually, sped your tires up, going forward with it.
Yeah. I really got dug into Wyoming after that, bro. I was a pack in the mountain kind of guy back in the earlier days, boy, because it was awesome, man. I was tied into the family at that point. They knew how to do it and had the capabilities with all the horses and all that kind of stuff to do that. So yeah, it was a pretty amazing deal. So I haven't suffered the hunting struggles with family and balance and all that kind of stuff that most people have, because my wife met me, or I met her, depends on who you're listening to at that time, on a hunting trip. So it was a pretty easy transition for us, and has always been, even raising 2 boys. My boys are obviously as grown, if you will, now, but I stayed gone probably more then than I do now. I was gone 6 months a year pretty much for a lot of my boys' life, filming in remote destinations across the country. And my wife was cool with it just because it's what kept the lights on. So she was good with it.
Oh, that's great. Well,
very blessed, no doubt.
Yeah, exactly. It sounds like it. Well, I think that really that quick overview kind of will start the rabbit hole plunge here. I kind of think it'd be interesting to go back to maybe when you were younger, or when that light bulb really clicked for you about this hunting lifestyle and where it came from. And I think it's going to carry us through the conversation now, all the way to what you're doing now. So if you just want to start there, where, something that really sets your memory off about what made that tick for you when you,
I am not a visionary style individual. I can't see tomorrow, much let alone in the future. But when I was a young man, as many young people do when they're going through that 12 to 15-year-old standpoint in their life, things change, mindset change, puberty happens, a lot of stuff going on for any young person, whether it's a guy or a gal at that time. But I grew up and basically owned the farm that I grew up on now, and this location I'm sitting in here right now is only about a mile from the farm that I grew up on. So I grew up as an outdoorsman, but more on the line of a coon hunter. My dad was a world-renowned coon hunter, world champion coon hunter. He traveled and coon hunted just like I traveled and hunt whatever gets in the way or whatever tag I can get a hold of.
Right.
So he was a professional coon hunter my whole life, and so I started coon hunting at probably the age of 4, best I can remember. Maybe before that, but that's where my memory takes me is 4. But my dad coon hunted and I coon hunted together at least 3 to 4 nights a week up until I was like 12 years old. So we were very tight. My dad was a big houndsman. I like dogs, but I got tired of feeding 30 coon hounds every day of my
It's
life. So
work.
it was work. So I don't do that anymore. But when I was 12, my dad had he had an epiphany that he thought he needed to be somewhere else. So he stepped out.
Mhm.
And that happens. You hear broken families a lot this day and time. So from when I was 12 to 15, 16, 17 years old, man, was just really in a downward spiral of suck, to be
Mhm.
honest with you.
Yeah.
My
Sure. Tough
world
age.
was age for tough age in general.
Yeah.
And then going from a lifestyle of being with my dad, coon hunting 4 nights a week, to him not in my life whatsoever, was very tough for me. And I leaned on other individuals in my world, and uh, probably not the best people to lean on. The old
Yeah.
saying is, if you're going to be an eagle in life, you hang out with eagles. If you want to be a turkey in life, you hang out with turkeys.
Mhm.
Apparently, I was in a flock of turkeys at the time and did not realize it. And they led me down a path of a lot of bad decisions,
Mhm.
a lot of alcohol abuse. When I was 15 years old, at least 5 nights a week, if I wasn't so intoxicated that I was throwing up, I didn't consider it a good evening. Just really in a bad state of affairs.
Yeah.
And there was one turning point. I had in high school I was in FFA, or Future Farmers of America,
Yeah.
just because I was a country boy and still am. So that was my connection to other dudes of like mindedness.
Mhm.
They also like to party hard, and we all took advantage of that. But I had one guy in particular that his dad and him were deer hunters, and here in Middle Tennessee, where I live at now, wasn't a lot of deer back in the day, so I didn't hear much about it, but he was more enthralled with archery. He was a bow hunter. And he asked me one day at an FFA meeting or something if I had ever been bow hunting or if I ever shot a bow. And I'm like, no, man, but my mind is very mechanical. I like doing mechanical things,
Mhm.
like building stuff, and archery is very mechanical, in my opinion. A lot of stuff goes on wheels and cables and arrow weights and front of centers and all the stuff that goes into being a very good archer. That intrigues me a little bit. So I'm like, oh no, I never shot a bow, but I would sure darn be interested in it. So he took me to his home one afternoon. We shot a bow, told me a little bit about deer hunting, and like literally, it consumed every ounce of my life from 17 to 19 and 20 years old. All I could think about was bow hunting. I read every hunting magazine from front to back, back to front, and then read it from the middle and went out both ways. I was so um, captivated by archery hunting, which is so odd because I hardly do any of it now. My world is muzzleloaders and firearms. But when I say that, not to say that bow hunting captivated me, but the sport of deer hunting and being outdoors again is what captivated me. And basically, at the end of the day, when I would turn 19 or 20 years old, I had an epiphany. It just hit me that I stopped doing all the craziness that I was doing, and the only common denominator that made me change my ways was the outdoors.
Mhm.
So that basically, I know this sounds really cliche to say this, but basically, really, the outdoors saved me,
Mhm.
because I was, and I think there was a plan, because there was many nights when I got my driver's license, I'd come home and get up in the morning and the mirrors be tore off my truck or a fence post be sticking out of the radiator,
Yeah.
where I'd literally come home so blasted drunk that I didn't know what I was doing and had no idea. Wake up next morning and apparently ran through somebody's fence that night, and
Mhm.
it never even dawned on me that that happened till the next day.
Yeah.
Um,
But
but there was
real quick, let me cut in because I don't want to miss this point, Tony. But you know, I think this is gonna be episode 44. And everybody I've kind of picked their brain about, going back to the very beginning. There's been a gap sometimes between, maybe it's high school, maybe it's sports, maybe it's something like family situations like this. But that one spark or that one thing that happened to them, being young from learning how to be in the outdoors or coon hunting like you did with your dad,
Mhm.
it really came full circle and really, it was a big part of their life. It's a big part of a turning point in their life. So I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I thought it was
No, you're
really
good,
neat
man.
that, it continues to happen. Each guest that gets on this podcast, that spark,
It's
it
a switch that has been
it,
flipped.
it ignites again at some point in time. And sometimes like your story, and it's a great testimony. It's something that can be a dramatic and amazing change in a person's life.
Well, it definitely changed me because I remember this is I uh, like a lot of people. I can't remember much what I did yesterday, but I remember the exact turning point. Not just when that kid asked me or that guy asked me to go to his house and sling a few arrows that evening and learn how to draw a bow and all the stuff that I wasn't familiar with. But I remember, excuse me, I remember I was at this particular party, and I don't remember what was going on, but just a typical FFA
Hmm.
country boy party out in the woods somewhere, another a bunch of 4-drive trucks kind of thing. And I remember somebody saying something, hey, let's leave here and let's go to the next spot. Let's go. We're gonna so and so is gonna meet us on this next farm. We're gonna party over there a couple hours tonight.
Hmm.
We'll close it out over there and watch the sun come up. I'm like, ooh, man, it's 10 o'clock. I'm gonna have to check out because I found this thing I saw in a magazine called a scrape. It's like this thing in the dirt where deer like dig in it or something. I said, I found one of those in the woods the other day, and I read in North American Whitetail, if you find one of those, that's the place to be in November. I said, I'm gonna have to check out because I'm gonna be on that scrape tomorrow at daylight. And
That's
I
awesome.
remember that, and I remember leaving going, I can't believe I'm leaving this party to go get in the woods at daylight in the morning. But I did, and after that, it's I say it's been uphill or downhill. I'm not sure
Yeah.
which direction it is, but nonetheless, it's been a great direction. And when I got up to I guess 20 years old, I was going to I was dating this gal. We was going to church. I was going with her to church on Sundays, and the pastor of that particular church was a really big outdoorsman,
Hmm.
well known in our area for being a great turkey hunter. Um, and I guess I'd known him for a couple months and felt comfortable enough to go up to him. And his name was Larry Swain. I said, Mr. Larry, I said, I got a weird question I need to ask you. I said, but I got something that's weighing on me and I don't know what to do about it. And I need some help or some guidance. He says, yeah, spit it out. What's the deal? I said, well, Larry, I have realized over the last several months up to a year that, the outdoors has really took a hold on my life. And I know that it saved me and got me out of potentially a lot of trouble. It got me home a lot earlier at night without intoxication involved. And I said, I think I'm supposed to do something with that. And I just don't know what it is.
Hmm.
He said, well, what do you mean? I said, Larry, I said, I don't think this is a job. I said, but I'm going to tell you something, and please don't laugh me out of the building here, but I think I'm supposed to give back. I think I'm supposed to be in the outdoor industry some way, shape, form, or fashion. And I don't know. Number one, I don't know if there is such a thing as an
Yeah.
outdoor industry. I said, but I have been reading a bunch of magazines for the last 2 or 3 years to learn how to deer hunt. And I said, these guys are professional outdoor writers. They're making money writing about the outdoors. And man, I barely got out of English class in high school. I said, I'm not a writer. I said, but I feel like I'm being pulled into this direction and I don't know what to do. He said, well, he said, I don't know if that's a job or not. He said, I've never heard of anybody talking about no professional outdoors or none of this business. He said, but if you think you're supposed to do something, he said, learn how to write, start writing. I'm
Yeah.
like, Larry, I have a hard time spelling my name,
Yeah.
let alone writing a hunting magazine or hunting article. But he said, look, if you want to do something bad enough, you'll figure out how to do it. So I was reading all these publications, the Dr. Grant Woods and Larry Weissoon and all the icons in the hunting industry that were outdoor writers. I was reading number one for education, but when I would go back and read them for the second and third time, I would read not for education, but to understand penmanship,
Hmm.
how to write, how to use proper language. And I know when I talk, I write and talk totally different. I
Yeah.
talk Southern. I write semi-educated. Even my wife goes, I don't know who wrote this, but you didn't write it. when I was writing a lot back in the day,
You've been paying
so
an editor.
uh,
You've been paying a good editor.
well, yeah, you think so for sure. But I just learned by reading these guys that had wicked power of the pen. I learned my style from them, and that's kind of when Traveling Hunter was born, because I had to start emailing queries to editors of publications and um, emailing photos back and forth and all this kind of stuff. So that's where email kind of come into my world. But Traveling Hunter was born at that point, and it was just because I needed an email address. And I was writing, I was writing for my home state's largest publication called Tennessee Outdoor News. Was my first assignment, if you will.
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
started writing normal articles, and then I started doing over a year or so in, I started doing columns on different hunting trips. So my thought is I'd work hard through the summer and then not work none in the winter. So basically, in September, I had created a landscape management company. So I would heal the company in September, and then I would sleep in the back of my truck and travel from state to state to state to state to state, gathering. Well, I was hunting, obviously,
Yeah.
but it was to gather information to write articles about, and which another big portion of rabbit hole. But those states that I hunted in, we was not allowed to use centerfire rifles. I started in Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, Iowa, Kansas, Nebraska, and I would just do basically a hard 4 to 5 month tour, sleeping in my truck, hunting public ground, carrying a muzzleloader, because that's all most of those states would allow, no centerfire stuff there, and that's kind of what I did hunt with here a little bit, was old Remington 270 back in the day.
Don't want y'all to miss out on this exclusive Hat Club deal. 20% off each month, $26 is the price, and you can get a hat just like this or this one and many more that we're coming out with that's going to be exclusive to our Hat Club. Click that link below and join our exclusive Hat Club. You don't want to miss out.
Yep.
So I would come in after 4 or 5 months of sleeping in my truck and living in this little Toyota pickup truck, basically, and pull in all the photos that I had taken with Polaroids. Yep, some of you guys probably never heard of that, but I was taking photos with Polaroids. And then I would pull those photos and start logging them in once I got back home. And then I would just go in and start writing articles about each one of those adventures. Partially about the adventure, also educational side of how it happened, where I was at, what I was doing, the time of year, the moon phase, all that kind of stuff. Just put it all together, and before you knew it, I was an outdoor writer.
It's awesome.
Yeah, so it again, if you want to do something bad enough in life, you'll figure out a way to do it. And I just knew that the outdoors saved me, and if it could save me, it could save somebody else. Almost, and really crappy time of the world to bring it up, but almost like the flu, or like an infectious disease of some
Yeah.
sort, because it grabbed a hold of me and basically changed my path. And I knew if it could change my path, I could infect somebody else with that same passion that I had, and it would change their life. So
Yeah.
that's the reason I started writing, not to be some celebrity dude, but I wanted to give back, because I knew if it could save me, it could save somebody else, basically.
Yeah, that's I was not expecting that story, Tony. That's awesome testimony. It really is. I mean, I think a lot of people can get a lot out of it because, with technology now, there's tons of people now that are doing the podcast, or they're filming hunts, or whatever it is. But sometimes you can tell but almost by the content, is their heart into it, or are they doing it because they think they're going to achieve a certain status, And listening to your story, I think a lot of people can get at it, and we were kind of talking before. God always has a plan for people. It's just sometimes you have to let it kind of work itself out, right? And
Sometimes you got to go through some trials and tribulations to figure
right,
out what the proper path is. And, I call it being in the well, just like a bull rider. When he gets down
hmm
in the well, it's tough to get out of that well, but
right,
it is possible at times. Not every time, but
right,
I got down in the well at a young age of 12 to 15, 16, whatever. And thankfully, I had somebody was put in my life to teach me how to shoot a bow and arrow, which took over my life, which in turn made me see the light, if you will, that there was
hmm
somebody watching over me every night, where I come in and the mirrors were tore off my truck and barbed wires hanging out among the trailer hitch in the back.
Right.
There was somebody with me all those times. At that time while I was in the well, I didn't know it, but I did know it when I got into my early 20s,
Yeah.
and got into writing and things like that. But also had that gentleman, Mr. Larry Swain, the pastor of that church at the time, said, "Hey, if this is what you're supposed to do, if this is your path, then figure out how to
Yeah.
make the road, if you
Well, I
will."
definitely think it's your calling because obviously it's worked out great for you. And
Oh
you
man,
know,
at
well,
that
I think
time, I would have never in 100 million years believed
right.
where I'm at today, and not thinking when you say that, it says, "Oh, where I'm at today," I'm not flying in a private jet and all this kind of stuff, but
Mhm.
I am living the dream that I did dream of at 19
Yeah.
years old. But it's not for lack of a lot of hard work and dedication, and
Right.
thankfully that now or well, 19 years ago tomorrow, I met a great woman that pushed me harder too, that helped out along the way because she understood where I come from and what was going on, and so
Yeah.
as
You
that
started
story,
running with eagles, right?
what's that?
You started running with eagles, right?
Yeah, then I found some eagles in the world. So I ran into this gal. Here's an odd story. So I work for CVA and Bagara Rifles today. My first real job outside of being an outdoor rider in the hunting industry, I worked for another muzzleloading company because that's all I could hunt with on those travels where I was gathering data for my articles for my
Hmm.
home state publication. So I was hunting with a night muzzleloader.
Hmm.
I was at a show in Montgomery, Alabama. So again, I didn't grow up in a deer hunting family, so I was reading hunting magazines and then going to every hunting show that I could because at that time there was always big name guys show up and give seminars and tell you how to hunt scrapes on a full moon.
Right.
Give you information. So every year I would go to Montgomery, Alabama in August to a event called the Buckmaster Expo.
Hmm.
Buckmasters is still around today. I don't know if it's as big as it was, but back in the day when I was in my 20s, it was huge, and I would go there every August as a data collection point to gather more data for my intel to become a better hunter, so I can make better hunting stories. But also pick up my hunting gear for the year. That's where I go gather hunting gear, just because it was in August, and September is kind of when I took off on the road. And
Hmm.
I walked past the night muzzleloader booth, and again, there's always a plan. Um, that plan we just don't ever know until we look back, because
Right.
obviously hindsight is always the clearest. But I was
20.
at Buckmasters Expo in Montgomery, Alabama, and I walked past the night muzzleloader booth. Folks doing there what I do today for CVA and Bagara.
Hmm.
And I walk by and I'm like, "Oh man, I got one of you guys' muzzleloaders. It's awesome, man. I've killed all these different bucks and blah 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 blah." And she said, "Well, let me show you the newest models." I'm like, "Nah, nah, nah. I ain't got time to be looking for no new models because man, I'm broke as a snake. I ain't
Yeah.
got two nickels to rub together. I can't afford a new one. I can afford one." But it is yours, and I appreciate you making a great gun because it's allowed me to make a lot of great shots on animals across the country that I can put into articles. And so I
Hmm.
just left. I just walked off from the sales pitch and left. And so that was on Saturday. I come back Sunday, walking down the aisle. Was like Sunday was my cleanup time. I'd go through and gather my cover scents, which of course a lot of guys may not know what that is now because we're all scent free. But back in the day, before scent free stuff, we used cover scents like
Yeah.
dirt and cedar and all that stuff. So I would gather all my
Fox
stuff.
Bean. Yeah. Everything.
Yeah, all that kind of stuff. So I walk through on Sunday to gather up my junk so I can head back home. And this gal at the night rifle booth, she goes, "Hey, you stopped in here yesterday, did you?" I said, "Yes, ma'am, I did." I said, I have that muzzleloader we talked about." And she said, "Hey, I was just up at this other booth up here, and it was a cover scent company, and they had told me the year before when I was at that expo, if I'd shoot a big buck using their product and send them a photo, they'd give me a free bottle of scent. And to a broke guy, $7.99 free bottle of cover scent, that meant a big deal to me. So
You're bringing a
I was,
photo back.
oh, bro, I'd load them son of a guns up. I'd send them 10 photos a year. Oh,
Like a deck
I was
of
like
cards.
playing cards, baby. I was dishing them out. So I'd rake in, I'd come in and I'd have a whole bag full of cover scents they give me. And this gal goes, "Hey, I saw your photo up there. They're like using you as a poster child." I'm like, "Well, ma'am, they give me free scent. Why would I not? Send them a photo of a big deer using their product. They send me free stuff." I said, "So I'm here collecting today and I'm headed home." She said, "Well, I noticed that in every one of those photos is our gun." I'm like, "Ma'am, I told you yesterday, all I, I'm poor as a snake. She said, well, who pays for all them hunting trips? I'm like, I live in the back of a Toyota pickup truck and I travel 4 to 5 months a year and I pay for it. I said, but it is on a very, very small budget, I can tell you.
Beanie
She said,
weenies and Vienna
well, do you
sausage.
do? Yeah. Oh man. Oh yeah. Maybe that was extra. I think most of it was like potted meat and crackers. But she said, well, do you do any outdoor riding or anything? What are you doing with all these pictures and stuff? I'm like, well, matter of fact, I am. I said, I do some writing for a local publication in my state called Tennessee Outdoor News. She said, well, how many articles do you publish a year? And I was like, well, I'm in every month about something. And she said, well, we got a program for guys like you. I'm like, well, shoot, what kind of program are you talking about? She said,
I'm
well,
listening.
we have an outdoor writers program. I'm like, well, I don't know what that means. I don't know what you're talking about. She's
Mhm.
like, well, if you'll sign a contract with me and say that you'll only use our guns, I'll send you 2 free guns a year, all the bullets you can handle, all the supplies you need.
Oh my God.
I'm like,
Where's the paper?
sign me up, sister.
Here's some blood.
I broke her arm shaking her hand. And so I'm like, yes, ma'am. So I'll get back to Iowa. I'll send you the contract. She sent me the contract like a week later. I signed it, snail mailed it back to her. And then before you know it, I was going to the Iowa muzzle loading plant, hanging out with those guys, getting the newest of newest muzzle loaders. I actually started. They had their own magazine that went out to only night rifle owners. It was called Up in Smoke, kind of like a Cheech and Chong kind of thing. Now that I think about it, but it's called Up in Smoke. I started writing articles for that publication, and eventually became the editor in chief of Up in Smoke Night Rifles. All the while still doing my home state publication stuff. And then I started, like, I don't know, I'd say 2 years into working with Night, I started being a liaison for outdoor riders with Night muzzleloaders. So back in the day, every big hunting company would take outdoor riders hunting across the country at some point in time. And so I would be the company man to take these outdoor riders hunting. So we'd go out and I'd take them, make sure they wasn't pointing their finger down the end of the barrel and make sure they was looking down the gun the right direction. And I guess I got a pretty bright education of what some outdoor riders are.
Right.
Some not hardcore hunters, but like to write. But another story. But so I was company man, go on these hunts, make sure they was having a good time. I was the feel good guy, basically, the politician, if you will. So after a couple of those trips, I started gathering a lot of intel from these really influential outdoor writers, and I took it back to my home state's publication, Tennessee Outdoor News, and I talked to the editor and the owner of the publication. I was like, "Hey, man, why don't we do this? This here's some of these big writers that I'm doing are doing this in magazines. Let's do it here in our home state publication and make our magazine grow." Of course, I'm a entrepreneurial spirit kind of guy, and the guy goes, "No, I'm not interested in doing that. I just want to make money, and it's good." So I'd go on another trip, and I'd come back with some more ideas, and he'd be like, "Nah," he'd just poo-poo it. "Nah, we're good. We don't want to do none of that." I'm like, "Look, bro,
He's just business as usual.
yes, business as usual. I'm trying to help the guy out." And so anyways, we just was not seeing eye to eye. And so my thought was well, in my mind, I'm like, I probably can run this magazine better than you can, bro. So I'm like, all right. So you're not implementing none of my ideas. So what's it going to take for you to get out of my way? He said, "What do you mean?" I said, "Well, get out of my way. Let me own this publication." He said, "Well, oh, you want to buy this publication?" I'm like, "Well, not really, but I want to grow the outdoor touch that we have across the state." And I said, "You're just not willing to implement my ideas that I'm learning from this being a liaison for night muzzleloaders." He said, "Well, this is the money. This is the dollar I want." I said, "All right." I wrote him a check. He walked out the door. I became the owner of my home state's largest hunting and fishing publication, and I guess working for him for 3 years. So at 23 years old, I owned the largest hunting and fishing magazine in my home state of Tennessee, and ran it for 10 years. And
That's amazing.
It grew tremendously. But again, did I plan to be an editor and owner of a publication? No, because I barely got out of high school. But
I mean, like, if you look back over all those things, Tony, I mean, everything was setting you up to be prepared for that. I mean, it's crazy because, I was talking with Mike Burnside last week. He was on the podcast again, and And, you know, he was talking about, he lost his father at a young age and his mother right before his kids were born. And then, you know, some things that happened with his family and stuff, and medical issues with Kinsey, his daughter. And it's like, if you look back now and the way he's living life, like really living, actually living life, everything was kind of preparing for these moments. And it's awesome to like, you've just taken us through a quick snapshot of all your progressions, but it was supposed to happen. And you can tell
There's a
from,
plan. And
yeah,
again, there was a reason that those fence posts that was hanging out underneath that truck of mine at different times were not through the windshield.
yeah.
There was a plan. Thankfully, not a real smart guy, but thankfully I was smart enough to see that when I got up, 19, 20 years old. I'm very thankful for having the right people around me. Thankful for the gentleman who taught me how to bow hunt,
Mm-hmm.
which created this insane passion for the outdoors, which has now turned it so the passion for the outdoors obviously is still there,
Mm-hmm.
but changed it to a mission to, I guess, not brag about the fun that I have doing what I do, but make people want to be a part of it,
Yeah.
and get outside and do things.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, there was always a plan. I'm a very slow learner, so it took me a while to get it all figured out. But I pushed my way
Yeah.
through a little bit. And, my wife and I ran that publication for 10 years and ended up selling it. But while I was doing it, I started writing the safety instructional DVDs for night muzzleloaders. So every gun that went out the door had a DVD in it, which some of you guys may not know what that is either that's listening to this
Mm-hmm.
podcast. But it's a hard disk you slide into this thing that puts it on the TV. But basically, I would write the DVDs for somebody to basically do a voiceover or something like that. And
Mm-hmm.
after the first year, I started writing them and hosting them. Basically, congratulations on the purchase of your new night rifle. Today on this video, we're going to teach you how to use and maintain your new night muzzleloader, and then go into this whole spiel about the new models of muzzleloaders we had for the
And
year.
whoever has bought one of those, there's the voice right there that you heard.
That's it. That's right. That's it. So I started doing that, and then we were sponsoring a bunch of different TV shows, and we thought, well, maybe we'll take one or two of those sponsorships back from the TV shows and do our own TV show. So I started hosting a TV show for night rifles called Night Rifles Born to Hunt. It was on the
Mhm.
Outdoor Channel, and then Travelin Hunter really took off, if you will, as we were start hunting in August with a muzzleloader and not return home until February in most cases.
Mhm.
Um, and then after that, I started working for Summit Tree Stands as a host of their show called Summit's High Places. And then from there, I went to Moultrie's, TV show was called Moultrie The Hit List, which is Moultrie game cameras.
Yep.
The first time that anybody had ever introduced the cellular concept into trail cameras. Moultrie was the first to play ball in that, and we were using those trail cameras to come up with our hit list bucks across the country. And then from there, again, I'm kind of an entrepreneurial kind of guy. I like to do not. Well, I have a vision and I want to run with it sometimes.
Right.
So I started my own show called Travelin Hunter, and it
Mhm.
was kind of an Anthony Bourdain kind of show, where we would travel to different locations. We would find different people in those areas, not just about a hunting trip, but we would find unique characters. So my opinion is, at that time, there was a lot of TV shows with guys sitting in a tree whispering.
Mhm.
And my opinion was that was not the hunt. The hunt was from when I'm in my workroom here building or putting together a muzzleloader, building load data and trying different bullets, drawing the tag, the travel, the talking to unique characters. Every town in the world has got a unique character in it. And our job, once we got on site, was to find that unique character, film that, film him, film his story or her story or the location story, and then do a hunt there and then travel back home. And then basically walk inside my home, which is connected here to this room.
Mhm.
Uh, and so the whole entire trip, leaving and coming back, my opinion, is a hunt. Is part of the
Yeah.
hunt.
Yep.
So that's where Traveling Hunter, the television show, was born, and we ran on Sportsman's Channel for 4 years. And circle back just a little bit, my dad did come back in my life. He saw the light, I guess, if you will, and come back in my 20s. And we didn't G-haul for a long time, but we did get past our issues, and he become really weird saying, I guess, my biggest fan, if you will. and pushed me to do even better.
Yeah,
So
awesome.
from there, I started an outfitting operation in Illinois, in the Golden Triangle of Illinois, and had 2,000 acres up there that we hunted and managed for years. Still running the publication from a distance a little bit, helping some folks out with that publication, even though I had sold it. Hosting Travelin Hunter. I mean,
You're
we
pretty
were
busy.
really burning it at both ends for quite a while. But unfortunately, my dad, and then not to mention, I was running for state senator here in my hometown or in my community, if you will. I was running for state senator there for about 6 months. Not that I'm a politician, but I like to help people out.
Yeah.
So I was running for state senator, running an outfitting operation in Brown County, Illinois, still hosting television as well, and still had a landscape management company that.
I was wondering where that was gonna fit in at.
Yeah, that was all still going on in the background too. But at that time, I had built it up to where I had a lot of
Right.
employees. I didn't have to work as much doing that. But
Right.
but all that said, I stopped all of that, which gets us where we're at today. I sold my outfitting camp in one day. I closed everything down. I stopped doing any kind of writing. I stopped doing Travelin Hunter in a period of about maybe 48 hours.
We wake up well before anyone or anything else. We have spent our time studying, researching, and planning. As one day, these are lessons that will be handed down to our kids and our grandkids. We believe in buying a tag, even if we know we may not harvest an animal, as it will go to protecting the future for our kids. Now, we have taken it a step further. With every bag of bear beans sold, 10% will go to protecting the environment and animal populations, so the traditions that were handed down to us will get passed down once again.
About my dad's sickness, because everything, no matter what age we are, we have goals. Whether 19 or we're 45, we have goals. Right. I had met every goal that I had put in my place at a young age. Owning an outfitting operation, owning a magazine, hosting outdoor TV, blah, blah, blah. I was in the height of that when my dad got sick, and I knew it wasn't his fault. I mean, I'm going to say this jokingly, if he was a crackhead and he got him into that shape, it wouldn't have been that big of a deal. But dementia is something that nobody can control. That folks, that if you're around somebody and they have dementia, it ain't their fault.
Right.
So I knew him being sick wasn't his fault, and I knew that if it was me, my dad would stop doing whatever it was he was doing to come take care of me. And even though I was at the height of everything that I had ever dreamed of, it all had to be stopped immediately to go back and take care of him. Unfortunately, his disease only lasted 6 months, and he passed 6 months later, so it's very aggressive. So basically, once I laid him to rest, I was out of the hunting industry-ish. I was still working. So we missed a segment. Night Rifles went out of business in 2009. In 2009, I started working for CVA the next morning when night muzzleloaders went away. I already hired those guys in Atlanta, CVA muzzleloaders at the time. So I was working for CVA when my dad passed as a full-time employee, as a national pro, if you will, a traveling speaker for them, also while hosting my TV show. So I didn't quit doing that because they understood, and they would basically just say, do what you got to do and don't worry about us. We'll manage. So when that happened, when my dad passed, I had closed everything I'd ever dreamed of. The CEO at that time, Nate Treadaway, called me and goes, "Hey man, what are you going to do after your dad's gone?" I'm like, "Bro, I got no idea." In the last 6 months, I have lost everything that I worked for in 40 years. TV, magazines, state senator, running, outfitting operation. I said, it's all gone. I got nothing. I don't know what I'm going to do. He said, well, we're going to hire you not to do TV ever again. I'm like, well, crap, was I that bad? What's the deal?
The
like,
face
no.
made for radio, right?
Yeah. He said, no, man, no. He said, we want you to start working with our outdoor writers and bloggers and podcasters and YouTubers and television shows, because your whole life has been what they are, except I've never been a podcaster, but
Right.
you have lived with doing all the stuff that the media people we work with today are trying to be. And we want you to be the liaison for our brand, the CVA brand, and now obviously Bagar brand as well. But so I started working for CVA. That was, I guess we're going into 6 years now. So I started working for them in 09, but my capacity increased tremendously 6 years ago. So my title now is head of influencer relations. Basically, I think that's a redneck politician is what I call it.
Yeah.
So I get to work with all the folks that I have stood in their shoes at some point in my life, and it makes it really amazingly easy to work with these guys, because when they come to me with a question or a concern or a need or a want, I'm like, oh yeah, bro, no problem. I've been there.
Yeah.
Got it. Easy fix, bro. We'll take care of this.
Walked in them shoes.
Yeah, I've been there. So it's really easy, and it's all that stuff that we just talked about really set me up from where I'm at today, dealing with folks in media in the outdoor industry, no matter
Yeah.
what umbrella of media that they're in. It's just I don't get up a day and go to work at all.
Right. Yeah.
So,
No, that's a great way to be. I mean, a lot of people, they get into a groove, or maybe not a groove, actually more of a rut, where they're, just living day by day, and it's just an anchor attached to them. And all of us have a plan that has been put together before we even got on this earth. And,
you bet you was.
we have free will to choose, and, sometimes we just make the wrong choices. And luckily, through this awesome testimony story that you've told, somebody that wanted you to go bow hunting with them helped straighten that whole path out there straight away.
That kid didn't have to do this. So you really want
Right.
to just micro into it like crazy. That kid didn't have to do that.
No.
Somebody, it was a weight on his shoulder from somebody
Yeah.
to tell him, hey, go ask Tony if he wants to learn how to shoot a bow.
Right.
He didn't have to do that.
No, he didn't have to. And I think another thing you could probably take out of this, Tony, is also use that as an example about how you should be to our fellow hunters or our fellow community or whatever community we're in, because you don't know what somebody else is going through, and you don't know, something that you might
Everybody's
be able to
fighting
help them out.
snakes.
Right.
Everybody's fighting snakes.
Yeah. And you don't know
Look.
how something that you do, maybe it's something small, like inviting somebody hunting. I mean, hunting to me and to you, I'm sure, is a place where you just leave this world behind. Like literally just melt away into it, even though it became a business for you. People can really find themselves in the outdoors. And that's what makes me so passionate about it. That's what made me want to start this podcast is, at first I really wanted to just, if I can get in touch with one person or let them hear this podcast one time and just, let them see what the outdoors has done in my life. That's what I wanted to do. I didn't care about the analytics. I didn't care about the statistics. And then, I mean, your story is a testimony to that. Like, you know what I'm saying?
So let me throw a curveball at you. So I don't know how long ago it's been now, but we'll say 6, 7, 8 years ago now.
Yeah.
I had so one thing I didn't tell you, when I was 19, I knew I was figuring out my path, and I knew that I needed to figure out how to not have a job in the fall. I think all of us need to figure that job out. So I was trying to figure out how to get a job where I didn't have to work in the wintertime, and that was cut grass. I have a landscaping company at 19 years old. I cut grass. But of course, at some point, before you start that, you can't just go into it. You got to have enough clients to pay your bills. So
you got to buy a mower and everything else first.
Yeah, you got to do all the getting all the tools and everything. So I was working at a custodian at a church. I was a toilet scrubber. I clean toilets every day, vacuum pulpits and bleachers and all that kind of stuff. Change light bulbs, anything a typical maintenance man would do. But it allowed me the opportunity to not be wore out after work, so I could work there through the day, work inside an air conditioning, go cut grass in the evenings.
Yeah.
Pursue that passion of being more full time in the outdoor industry. Reason I tell you that is about 20 years after I quit that job, they called me back and asked me if I would come down there and speak to a father-son outdoorsman evening.
Mhm.
I can't remember what
Yeah.
it was called.
Yeah.
But so, anyways, I went back down there and basically called all the members of the church that were outdoorsmen, the men and the kids there, up to speed about who I am and what I do at this day, and or at that time what I was doing, and that there's always a path that we talked about, and I was scrubbing toilets at this church 20 years ago. Blah blah blah. It's kind of a neat thing. And then so we've been talking about that for maybe, I guess we've been into the talk, or not seminar, but the talk for 20 minutes or so, and I heard the door open. I'm like, who's this sucker coming in here late? So I looked up.
Running my groove.
Yeah. You'll never believe who in the world it was. 20 years later, the guy who said, hey, man, if you think that's what you're supposed to do, go do it. Larry
Really?
Swain walked in the door and walked up and said, I ain't seen him in 20 years. He was the sole reason I was sitting at that pulpit that evening, talking to everybody in the room about my testimony and what I was doing with my life. And I'd already talked about it. There was one guy that was pivotal. I can never say that word again. I can write better than I talk. That basically turned my path. And I saw his name was Larry Swain. And then 5 minutes later, he walks in late to the conversation. And I said, well, you're
It's
not going to
funny
believe
how
it.
he walked in late. It made sure that you saw him.
I said, you guys, I know we're at a church right now, and this is a really weird situation. But the guy that I just told you about that I ain't seen in 20 years that basically turned my life around and put me here today just walked in.
Did your heart just stop?
He's sitting in the back of the room right now.
Did your heart just stop in that moment? I mean, I would have just.
I couldn't believe it. I mean, what is the odds? I ain't seen the man in 20 years, and he walks in, just happens to walk in that night. He said, and after that, of course, everybody turns around and it's like, ooh, ah, kind of thing. And Larry's like, just keep on doing what you're doing, man. I'm running behind. So I talked to him that evening. He said, hey, man, I just saw an advertisement come across. Maybe it was a local news station or something, that he saw it come across that I was going to be at this church speaking. He said, I knew I hadn't seen you in 20 years. I just want to come see you.
Amazing.
I'm like, bro, you don't know this, but your little bit of words changed a young man's life and got me to live every dream that I've ever dreamed of.
Man, that's
because
awesome.
You said, if that's what you're supposed to do, Tony, go make it happen.
What a story. Yeah. And I mean,
I ain't seen him since.
Yeah. Well, I can tell that it definitely was a big part of your life.
Oh, man.
But when you have a calling and you feel it, I guess one thing I wanted to ask you, I was trying to think of it. When you were in those moments of cleaning those toilets or doing that lawn, I mean, I know, because, I have these thoughts too. And I'm sure any ambitious person has the thoughts of, what I want to do. Were you ever like, is this all I'm going to be? Is this all I'm going to do? Or were you very, did you know you had something else? I mean, we all have that calling, but in the moment, it's like, how do I get to that point? Is this all it is?
And again, we talked about the bull rider sliding off the side of the bull. He's in the well. That's a tough spot to get out of. And when you're in the well, it's tough to see that. It's tough to see that outside the box vision. Hey, I want to be doing this podcast tonight, sitting in a gun vault, basically. Know that I didn't think that grand or that micro that I would be in this actual position, but I knew what I wanted, and again, not a silver spoon dude. My dad didn't have nothing. I have no education. I barely got out of high school, but one thing that I have been blessed with is drive and ambition. I got more sand in my pants for somebody to not live on a beach than anybody you can ever ask for. We can beat and bang and flop around all day long, but I'm going to get what I want. Unless it's have to kill me,
right,
to stop me. I was told by a gentleman a long time ago that about this turkey situation. You know, if you want to be a turkey, blah blah blah. But main thing is the only person gets in your way of being who you want to be is you.
So, yep.
If you want to be something, if you want to be a brain surgeon, you can be if you want to be bad enough. It's how bad you want to be it.
Yeah.
And I've always ran by that motto that, you know, if I got to work, you know, 27 out of the 24 hours a day, then that's what I'm gonna do. Because I'm driving my vehicle.
Yeah.
Nobody else driving my vehicle. I'm driving my vehicle. You know, I saw something come. Oh, speaking of technology, saw something across Instagram today. Basically, this guy is a pretty wealthy cat, and he says, you know, at least 10 times a week I get somebody to tell me, oh, it must be nice. Oh, it must be nice to have this. It must be nice to have that. And I can't say that I have not had that a lot growing up. It must be nice to hunt 10 states a year and shoot all these big deer and blah blah blah. Yeah, it is. And I'm not gonna lie, not being, I guess,
not beating
boastful about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, but what this gentleman took away from it is it is very nice, and you say it must be nice, but he said I can guarantee you that I come to your house and you're sleeping in on Saturday or Sunday, you're watching football for the whole afternoon.
Right.
He said I don't do that. He said my choice is to work hard 7 days a week. If it takes 8 days, I work 8 days a week.
Yeah.
And that's always been my motto. I have never tried to work on Sundays, but I end up doing work some way, shape, form, or fashion. But as far as going out and making a living per se, I don't do it on Sundays. But I work what I call can to can't. From what I can till I just can't no more. So I knew, revert back to that question, I knew that was just a stepping stone to get me where I wanted to go, just because I had enough drive and ambition to figure out how to get to that end goal. And that's me talking to you today in this gun vault.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. And, you know, I think, Tony, one of the big things, and I continue to kind of preach on the podcast, is that we live in such a tangible world now, and Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, wherever you're getting all your information, a lot of times it's just a highlight reel. I had no clue what your story was. I mean, you've been on the podcast before. Obviously, we didn't really go into the personal side of things, but you don't know the whole story. And yes, it must be nice, but you don't know the work and the drive and the effort and the determination it took to get to this point. So, you know, I think now the times now really hurt that situation because, you know, people just see all the good, you know, whether it's relationships or whatever, you know.
I preach this to my boys now. I mean, because, you know, obviously part of my job is I'm watching my social media influencers I work with here for the brands that I work for. You know, we have pro staff across the country, so I'm watching to make sure they're not posting dumb stuff and doing dumb things on social media. So I'm unfortunately on social media a lot, not all the time posting, but a lot of watching. And I talk to my boys, and of course, you know, everybody's kids are hung into the phone, and most adults are too. And I'm like, guys, you know, you mentioned this just a second ago. You know, that's a highlight reel. Yeah. You know, it does not show the bad times. You know, it only shows that he has a Lamborghini, and that's probably because he rented it down here, and he took 472,000 photos of in a day of him riding around this Lamborghini. He probably drives a Toyota Prius. You know, I said, but you see him driving a Lamborghini, you think he's wealthy, and it makes you mad and upset. You know, but that is all false. It's all fake.
Well, it's funny that you're saying that because I was talking to a guy last night about it. I'm just kind of partnering him with this spring. Hollerbeck Game Calls is a guy about my age down in the southwest corner of Virginia, and he hand makes custom calls. He's doing pot calls and stuff, and he had, you know, I was like, hey man, do you have any videos? I'd like to put it in my YouTube videos or whatever to help promote your stuff. Well, he spent all day yesterday videoing like each step of building this pot call, and he was like, man, he's like, it always gets in the way, this and that. But you know, the one thing that I think I'm, you know, trying to revert back to, and I did it yesterday, is showing kind of the behind the scenes on things and being more realistic, like being real to people, not just the highlight stuff. So that's why I posted a reel today of just a few shots. You know, we were trying to do the announcement yesterday about final draw. Well, I had the girls on my, you know, everything on my head, shoulders. And at some point she was tearing my hat off or yelling or crying or this and that. And I'm like, this is what happened the 50 other times I tried to make this video. But I
Yep,
think, that's real.
that
And
is
we
real.
got to stop living in such a fake world. We enjoy seeing the good stuff. We enjoy, all those things. But I think it's important to also realize this is not a real world we live in when you tune into Instagram and Facebook.
No, man, that stuff's crazy.
Yeah.
I hate to even be on it, but it's just the way of the world, unfortunately,
Mhm.
today. Um,
No, it is.
if
Yeah.
that stuff was around back in the day, I'm sure my life would have been much different because I'd probably been mad that I didn't have a Lamborghini or
Right.
something, and it
Right.
would have stalled me. I
Yeah.
think that people get stalled now by looking at that stuff,
Mhm.
and it really takes away from them actually getting out and doing the deeds, the
Yep.
work that it takes to get to that end goal.
Mhm.
A tough, tough spot in the world we live in today. But at the end of the day, if you want to be something in life, you absolutely can do it because nobody can tell you no but you.
Exactly.
And I knew what I wanted to do. It was, again, a very driven individual. So I knew what I wanted to do. And I was not going to let anything stand in that way until I met those goals. And I can say today, I'm 49 years old. Right now, I'll be 50 this year. That if I left this world today, I have reached every goal that I've ever set.
Yeah.
There we go.
That's amazing.
With the exception of being a state senator. I didn't make that, but my dad pulled me away from that.
Yeah. Well, there's still time.
Oh
Still
man, no,
time,
no,
Tony.
I'm maybe not as driven towards that deal now with the world we live in now,
Exactly. Yeah.
but
No.
nonetheless, no, it definitely has been amazing. I do here for the brands. I get to talk with great guys like you across the world that have goals and ambitions, and they're
Mhm.
doing what they need to do to reach those goals. And
Right.
me being an outdoor rider is you today being a podcaster.
Right.
And I work with a bunch of guys just like yourself, and I think it
Mhm.
is great movement across the country, whether it's guys in New York or I did a show in Salt Lake City, Utah here a couple weeks ago at the Western Hunting Expo. Ton of podcasting going on out there. I
Yeah,
probably
it's awesome.
did a ton of, or probably did a dozen podcasts while I was out there with different folks that come by the booth that want to talk about CVA or Bergar at that time.
Mhm.
So it's great to see all these people across the country because we have been across the country for the last 45 days or so, driving and pushing forward with
Yeah.
their goals.
Yeah.
And you're doing it tonight.
Well, it's helping also get I think continuing to get that interest or a good light on this hunting community. I mean, before I got into the podcast, I would have never have met the people I've met from here to Manitoba in the last year. I mean, I'm going in September to bear hunt with those guys up in Manitoba. And, I could go turkey hunt in North Carolina or, wherever now, just because you've made such great friends, but you would never connect. So I enjoy the technology on that aspect of it. But, Tony, kind of going towards the end of this podcast episode here, I think it'd be really great if we talked about CVA a little bit. And 2 weeks ago I was in our little gun store here at Clark Brothers in Opal, Virginia. And I went in there because Edie's like 4 years old, and I was thinking, maybe next year I'll get her in the turkey woods and stuff like that. But also, the big thing right now is this Scout 410.
Oh my God.
Can you tell us a little bit about that gun and just what makes it so special? Yeah.
When I first started turkey hunting, I started with a 10 gauge, and it was a custom built 10 gauge with the custom choke tube, lengthened forcing cones, backboard, number 5 nickel, blah blah, everything custom on it. That's because I was a terrible caller, and really nobody was much of a good caller back then, except maybe Will Primos.
Mhm.
And so we had to shoot them as far away as we could. So we was toting around 10 gauges, and that's just because 8 gauge shells were too hard to darn find.
Right.
And it's like walking around with a Volkswagen. I mean, literally a day of turkey hunting with a 10 gauge on your side was brutal.
You feel it.
I'm not a big guy. It wore me slap out. And at that time, who would have ever thought now that we're talking about hunting with the 410?
Right.
We're not talking squirrel hunting. We're talking turkey hunting. So like we talked earlier, technology has touched everything.
Yeah.
So now we're hunting with a single shot Scout 410. that we've been building for the last couple of years. We have a custom Jeff's choke tube that comes factory in the gun. We're shooting TSS, the tungsten super steel. It has made a youth gun become an adult gun and very effective out to 50 yards.
Yeah.
So the 410 craze kicked off a couple of years ago, and I am very well versed in why now, because that's the baddest thing you could ever hunt with. Because I'm telling you, tote a 10 gauge around for half an hour and then tote this CVA 410 around. It's like walking around with a feather in your hand.
Right. Right.
Literally, you're just walking around calling it turkeys. You don't even know you got a gun on your shoulder anymore.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. Well, looking at it like almost like chicken and the egg situation, is it like, if you look back, is it like TSS kind of started really getting big and then the 410 followed that? Is that kind of how it went?
It started, when the TSS come out, I remember there was a gentleman in North Carolina, one of our pro staffers. He had some of this new, it's TS something. He said, I'm gonna get you a shell or two of it. He said, but it's super expensive. I'm like, okay. So this guy's a
Is
really
it legal?
yeah, seriously, is it illegal? Is it like dynamite? What is the deal here? And he brought me, I feel like we were like doing like a drug deal, because we had ended the TF and he come by and just like dropped a few shells off in my pocket as he slipped past me. I'm like, boy, this is some really serious stuff. And then once I come home and shot it, I'm like, oh my gosh, what is this stuff? It is like, it's too much out of a 12 gauge. It's too much.
Yeah.
So I called him back going, dude, obviously, what the heck is this business? He said, oh, some new shot. That's all we knew at the time. Some new shot this guy's loading. And now, obviously, it has taken the world by storm, because there's several different manufacturers loading it now in their turkey loads. But it definitely was the pivot to where that, why do we need a 12? Let's hunt with a 20. Oh my gosh, 20 is a 60-yard gun now. Let's try 410. 410. Oh my gosh, it's very effective at 50. So yes, the tungsten super steel, whoever found that and why they dug into it, I don't know. But when they found it definitely revolutionized the modern push forward of small gauge shotguns to be very effective. I mean, I literally could not imagine. I got in this room behind me here, I got a bunch of 12 gauge turkey guns that I built over the years, but they're retired. There's no sense. You remember, everybody used to shoot the Mossberg like 835, shoot 3.5 out of. I mean, it'd knock out your buddy's mouth, bro. I mean, it'd knock your retinas loose. It kicks a dad burn hard.
Right.
And now we don't have to wear earplugs. I mean, it's better to wear earplugs, just so you know. But it's so quiet, you don't have to wear earplugs hardly. There's no felt recoil. It's great for adults like myself. It's great for my wife. It's great for kids. It's great for your young kids. Just, it is effective. So it's effective out to 40 or 50 yards, and there's no recoil. It's just easy.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's exactly what drew me to it. I actually fell in love with bow hunting. Well, I fell in love with bow hunting turkeys 3 seasons ago. And I'm just on that drive right now. But, with Edie, she is 4, and man, she gets up with me, and Everly's coming along too. She's 2, but Edie gets up with me. She loves turkey season. She loves March, because we go out and I'll take her out, and she has binoculars up, and she's looking and listening for turkeys, and it's just exciting. And so I stopped by the other day, and they didn't have any in stock, but they could order it. But I definitely want to get one for next year. So
when we come out with it, when we first started playing with prototypes, another really cool thing about what I get to do is I get to play with prototypes typically a year or so before Gen Pop gets to see them and understand what they are. But so with it being a 410 and hypothetically known as a youth gun per se of years back, our number one concern, once we got it built, knew it was going to shoot after working with Jebs, and that time we were using our testing with Apex ammo, because they're about the only ones, or the first ones that I knew that come out with commercial grade 410 TSS. So we were doing all this testing with the Apex stuff and shooting the Jebs choke tubes and trying to figure out which choke constriction was the best, and this and that and other. But I'm like, I think we're missing one thing here, boys. We're trying to figure out how to make this work for an adult. But this actually originally was a youth gun, but the length of pull on this gun is too long. So we need to make it to where a 4 or 5-year-old can shoot it, because they can now. It just
Right.
needs to fit them. So we built the Scout 410 to where you can remove a spacer out of the back. So basically takes an inch of the length of pull out, so it shortens it up for youth or small framed individuals per se.
Yeah.
And then as they grow or get bigger, they can put the spacer back in, and now it becomes a youth gun or an adult gun from a youth
Right.
gun. But again, still effective across the board for hunting turkeys. I'm on my second Grand Slam with the 410, and I've taken guys like David Blanton from Realtree Outdoors. Year before last, we went to Montana, and he's like, I can't believe we're flying to Montana with a 410. A 410. I'm like, David, I got it. Just come on with it. Bring
Yeah.
your scope, put your red dot on it. Let's go. We'll make it happen. He's like, man, I don't know if we do this. But once you get past the mindset of I'm hunting with a 410 and actually do it, or at least shoot it on a paper target,
Yeah.
you
That
have
changes
no, you know, it's now time to get away from that mule kicking, stomping 3.5-inch Mossberg and downsize to a Scout 410.
That's probably why I went to the bow, to be honest with you. I've carried around a Remington 870 for thumb hole stock 3.5-inch gun. I actually have a scar right here because I got a little like 3-power scope on it.
Oh, a
And,
little turkey scope?
Yeah, a little 3-power turkey scope, and I love it. I love it to death.
Just took one off a gun
Yeah.
yesterday.
Yeah, that's exactly it. You know, and I actually told the story the other day, Tony. There was a turkey that kept fooling me out in this cutover, brand new cutover at our farm in Dinwiddie, and he would get out and he'd fly down and pitch down onto this logging road, back and forth, back and forth. Hens would come to him, then they'd do their thing, and I was like, man, how am I going to get this turkey? It was just pure brand new cutover. I mean, you can see all the way across it, and Dinwiddie's flat. That's lower. That's towards North Carolina. It's pretty flat county. And I got home that afternoon, after that hunt, and I was all tore up because he'd whooped my butt again. My dad, we always used the line from Josie Wales, whooped him again, Josie, is what we always say. So he whooped me again. Yeah. So I get back and I took a fan I had dried out in an old Arrow, took some electric tape and wrapped it around that thing. And I said, well, I'm gonna make him think, I didn't have money to buy any of these, real expensive decoys. So I took that and I took old foam Henrietta that we had and went out there, got up early the next morning, and I put the decoys down on that logging road. And I knew where he had continued to be, roosting. And there was one little stump. It was probably like that tall off the ground. And I put that 870 across that stump and just let it, I laid down in the cutover right next to the road. And Tony, that daggone turkey, he gobbled right after sunlight started peeking through. Flew down. He had seen my fan and stuff. Flew down, and I'm not kidding you, Tony. From here, my computer screen's not far. That turkey strutted right past my gun barrel. Went on down there, and it was only like I didn't realize how close I had left the decoys because it was dark when I put them up.
Of course, yeah.
Oh man! Well, all I saw was like a blur of blue and white in that turkey scope. And I was like, "Well, that's his head." I shot, but I wasn't holding on with this hand. I just laid it on that stump. That thing kicked me and hit me right there, Tony. I was rolling around bleeding. The turkey's head was, he was rolling around bleeding. I didn't know what had happened. I thought I'd done like something ricocheted or something. It
was a 3.5-inch turkey gun.
Oh my God. It kicked the dog snot out of me. But I'll never forget that. But, now I've kind of moved towards the bow. But, the 410, I definitely was looking at it for, Edie and Everly as she's coming along. But, I've got a lot of friends that have been using, their own.
Oh,
so
yeah.
It's a very versatile gun.
It is very much so, and so it's just cool to see the modern progression of technology. And it's like we talked earlier, everything that we touch is, but to ever think that I would be using the 410 to travel across the country and hunt turkeys with ain't no way, bro.
Right.
But today, thanks to guys who ever come up with Apex or the TSS, the first,
right,
definitely changed our world, man.
Yeah. And that gun, does it come just in a single shot?
It is a single shot. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I want to ask this question because I think it'd be good for you to help explain it. Because I have a buddy and his dad were looking at them. They went and looked at the scouts and stuff like that. And they said, man, what if I need another shot?
Well, you wouldn't believe how many times that's come up in conversation.
Yeah, I'm sure that's probably the biggest question. I'm like, well, you better get, don't miss. I don't know what to tell.
So I guess I do understand that side of it. But it comes down to the archer he never thinks about taking that second shot.
Right.
And for my world, as a real hardcore muzzleloader hunter, I never think about that second shot. I think about making my first one the best it can be and making it count. So with that said, it never has really crossed my mind other than conversation, talking to other people about it. But typically in the turkey world, that first one's the one that counts. The last ones are Hail Marys. Boom,
Just
boom, boom, boom.
Yeah. Well,
And just so you know, when we only make a single shot, it's to save you money.
Right.
TSS is $10 a shot, bro.
You don't want to be
The first one count.
No plug coming out the gun. No, and I told Ben, he's actually co-hosts the podcast with me every once in a while. We've grown up since kindergarten together. It's him and his dad that were looking at him, and I said, you might be telling on yourself what type of turkey hunter you are if you go on that route.
At least what kind of shot you are.
Yeah. I mean, the decoys ain't but 15 yards from you. I've seen how you set up.
Well, I have a terrible thing, and I've bow hunted a few turkeys in the fall here on my farm here, but I like hearing the gun go bang too much. I just like hearing the roar, and the tinnitus in my ear tells me that every hour of the day. But it would be hard to go back to something that was not a single shot. I'm a terrible shot a lot of times, but if I got 5 in the gun, I'm gonna shoot 5.
Yep.
Even though the first one's good, I'm gonna shoot the next 4 just to hear the gun go bang. It's so bad that I quit dove hunting with an automatic and went to a side-by-side double barrel just so I could only shoot twice.
Right.
Just trying to save myself money is what it was. And that's what we're doing with the single shot, because we knew that TSS, like we saw the future here, we knew TSS was going to be $10 a darn shot at some point, which it is today. So we thought, we'll just make a single shot. We'll save everybody money.
That'll be the sales pitch for it, right?
True statement.
No, that's awesome. Well, Tony, I think we can wrap it up for tonight. I really appreciate you being on. I wasn't expecting how great this podcast. Not that I wasn't expecting.
Sorry to run down such a rabbit hole, bro.
But just the content that you've brought has been wonderful, man. I think people will get a lot out of it. And maybe if I can catch you before deer season or something like that, maybe we can have you back on and really unwind on some muzzleloaders. I have a CVA muzzleloader and I love that. That's where that sick of deer came from. I shot that with the muzzleloader. And
it was my absolute pleasure to talk about muzzleloading before muzzleloading season. Yeah,
so we'll definitely have you back on, and I think we'll go down that rabbit hole because I'd love to unwind that. But
there's a growing side of the industry too, man. We got long range muzzleloaders now that we've never had before, and the technology in that world is changing tremendously too. So I would love to enlighten your listeners on the things that muzzleloading provides today.
Well, invitation's always open. You just let me know when you're sitting still long enough, we can have one.
we got to get to it for October.
Yeah.
October, baby.
Yeah, that sounds good. And so Tony, where can everybody follow your content? And just go over that real quick.
So, it all goes back to the email address, man. I have hung on with the name of Travelin Hunter, and that's country slang. There's no G in that. So everything through social media and Twitter and Instagram, everything is Travelin Hunter. That's how you keep up with me. That's how you get a hold of me. Most of the business I do today is not on computers or phones. It's direct messaging and PM through Travelin Hunter, somewhere, shape, form, or fashion.
That's awesome. Yep. Well, I appreciate you being on, Tony. It's been a pleasure, man.
Well, I appreciate you, man. I appreciate all your hard work and diligent effort to continue promoting the outdoors like you're doing here through this podcast. And anybody listening here today, tonight, in your car, wherever you're at, where you might be listening, if you have any information that you'd like to gather about stuff we talked about in the CVA world, you can always go to CVA.com, which is the best place to catch us. But if you just want to talk about what's going on in your world, the way to get a hold of me is through Travelin Hunter.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate it. Yeah. Go visit those that website and look at Tony's stuff. I enjoy keeping up with all the things he posts, and it's interesting seeing you go around the country. But continue following us, Marshfield Outdoors, on Instagram, Facebook, and the YouTube channel. We've been putting these podcasts up on our YouTube now, so that's been a different avenue we've been trying. But other than that, continue listening to the Marshfield Outdoor podcast, and until next time, hope to see you in the woods.
Take care, guys.